Welcome to the 2025 Spring Figura Obscura drop. I'm going to make some predictions. I'm going to crack this thing open. You guys already know what it is. I have no clue. You've already had your Friday tease. I don't get the Friday tease. This is sent to me well before that. And yeah, so we've had, for springtime, we've had Monkey King, Egyptian Gods, and now it's 2025. The fall drop is usually a little, there's at least like a genre, right, that you can kind of guess within when it comes to the fall drops. Horror. And then the winter drops is usually holiday themed. But the spring drops is the true wild card. And I was thinking about they said they're going to come back to Egyptian gods. It could be that. It could be Horus, and they're going to use a new bird body that they're going to use for Aetheron 2, right? Like potentially. So they could be coming back to the Egyptian gods. Or I did notice something here in the new catalog. I guess this would be their 2025 catalog that came in the box with the Graveyard Skeletons pack. And I was just kind of reading the copy. I don't think there's anything different about the copy, but Figura Obscura, is recognizable characters taken from the worlds of literature, mythology, legends, cryptozoology, and holiday traditions. And we've had all of those except cryptozoology. So is this the year that we go with cryptozoology? Is this Bigfoot? I mean, it's pretty big. It feels like an ogre scale box would fit in here. And if they did Bigfoot, I would imagine they'd have to go pretty big with it. Could it be the Jersey Devil? They are located in New Jersey. A lot of people have been hoping that they're going to do the Jersey Devil. So yeah, I mean, I guess if I'm making a prediction, I'm going cryptozoology and then potentially Bigfoot or Jersey Devil. And now I'm not like super into cryptozoology, but I like the idea of those types of creatures, and I think it would be perfect for this stuff. And I know the Jersey Devil has like a super crazy history with like American history and connections with, I think, like Ben Franklin and stuff. So those guys love getting into their stories and their lore. So that could be interesting there. Anyway, let's crack this thing open and see what it is. It says Dork on the box. I need my knife. Need to take a breath. All right, here we go. So let me just do this right here. As usual, I will get it open. We'll reveal it, and then I'll get it on the table, and I'll do a whole big review of it. Let me close my knife here. All right, here we go. It looks like something big, and it looks like a pillar, a statue kind of guy here holding up. Oh wow, what is this gonna be? It's a totally different shaped box than I've ever seen, and I can't really tell from the side of the box what it's gonna be. Ganesha, wow! And look at look at this box. Okay, all right, this is like Indian mythology. So it is mythology here. Ganesha. Quick interjection here. I just wanted to point out that Ganesha is an actively worshipped god. This is a current religion. And so the word mythology can get problematic. I'm referring to the ancient stories of gods and goddesses and not to the idea that like a myth is something fake or made up. So while this is a story that has mythological elements, it's also an actively worshipped religion today. I just wanted to acknowledge that because I didn't do so while I was sort of live opening in the moment. Damage the box, so let me do it like this. All right, Ganesha. Again, like springtime Figura Obscura drops. Like, what the heck? You can't even predict it, right? All right, here we go. Wow. All right. This we've never seen a box this shape, so this is going to be an interesting one. All right, here we go. And we got other Hindu gods on the side. All right. Wow, look at that. Sorry about that. My camera just stopped, and I was kind of in the middle of it, so I'm not sure exactly where it cut off. So I'm just going to kind of keep going from here. This is the box, and then here's the inside. And I already looked at it before, but there's a look at the figure inside with the elephant head and the large body. Like, it's kind of hard to see exactly what it is, but it's like a very big body, like a different torso. I'm guessing it's probably a 1.0 compatible figure, like, maybe like Brute Scale 1.0 compatible. It looks like that, because the the extra arms. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the back. Looks like a swap out trunk. A lot of stuff that's hard to see in the box there, but you can kind of get a look at all of it. And this is fun part of like Figura Obscura. I don't know anything really about Hindu Indian mythology, and this will help. This will like encourage me to read and learn. So there you have it. And let me just show you this. I'm going to show all this in the video, but look at that. That is the fold out piece. And then there's the front. Of course, Nate Bartsch just killing it every time with these things. Thank you, Four Horsemen. I'm going to get this on the table, get the review going. I love being a part of this. And yeah, let's get this thing going. DorkLair. Here's Ganesha out of the box, and I'm super happy with this pose that I was able to, pretty much recreate not only the imagery that you see in a lot of the, artwork, but also like the cover art that Nate did on the box. And just being able to like kind of accomplish this pose is, I think, super key to how awesome this figure is as a display piece. It's got a ton of details from all of the different sculptured pieces on the halo, on the stool, on the axe, on that head piece there. Like the face itself, this elephant head sculpt is fantastic. There's just a lot going on with this figure. It is very true to that kind of like all-in approach to a Figura Obscura drop here. It fits in really well, I think, with the other springtime drops. They tend to be legends and mythology, and this case deities, right? Like, so it definitely kind of has that like colorful spring vibe that we get from these drops. So I do think this fits in really well. As far as the figure goes, this is pretty much a brute scale figure. It's it's compatible with 1.0 figures. The arms and legs are the brute scale arms and legs. You have this brand new huge torso, this big belt piece. Obviously, you have the new head, which has a lot of good movement. There's a double joint in there. There's just a lot of great stuff going on with this figure. Team effort here on the packaging. As usual, Nate Bartsch did most of the artwork, but the inside image of the wraparound was Tom Tolman. Now, looking at the outer box, the outer wraparound, you have Nate's depiction of this temple, and then this quite centerpiece work of art here with Ganesha in the middle of the front box. You do have some foil gold lettering, giving it that nice premium Figura quality for the packaging. And with the magnetic wraparound cover removed, you do have the window box here, more gold foil lettering. The whole thing depicts this like landscape scenery. On one side, you have Ganesha's parents, Shiva and Parvati. On the back, you do have the write-up by Jeremy. And on the other side, depiction of one of the stories where he's racing his brother around the world. So very nice looking packaging here, and just beautiful artwork as usual. And then you have Tom Tolman's contribution, which is the inside of the wraparound, which as usual with Figura Obscura doubles as a display option if you want to place your figure in front of it. And it's this beautiful scene of a palace room with all sorts of foods in that couch. So it would look, if you have it set up in that kind of like sitting on the stool pose, it'll look great in front of this backdrop. And finally, there is one more piece of artwork inside the box. So the insert piece, and it has this very abstract sun-like quality to this pattern here with a little bit of the elephant's face there at the bottom. Beautiful work. I also believe this was Nate Bartsch. And yes, as is usual with the Figura Obscura stuff, this does come with the mini comic sized informational book. Here we have the artwork of Tom and Nate, credits to the team, and then various things like an introduction and various stories, narratives kind of summed up by Jeremy here. No original text or anything, but just kind of like a little crash course on Ganesha and his family and some of the other deities within the pantheon of Hindu gods. And then here we are up close with Ganesha, taking a look at that wonderful elephant head sculpt here. You can see the wrinkles and everything very lifelike and realistic here. There's some life in the eyes, and you've got that red paint coming down the front. Ears are painted nicely. They are articulated. We'll get to that in the articulation. This headdress piece is removable, so you got that whole kind of bare elephant head. If you swing around there, there's all sorts of jewelry that comes with this character, and you can kind of put various necklaces and things on there, and he's got bracelets and anklets and just all sorts of ways to kind of customize the figure. Underneath here, we do have this new bare, big-bellied body here to kind of represent that big elephant nature of Ganesha. He does have 4 arms. The 2 arms in the back peg in and out. So if you wanted to just kind of have him with 2 arms, you could totally do that and sort of just like use this body as, maybe like an orc or something like that. It's got gray skin, so it's clearly not going to be a human, but you could totally repurpose that body if you're looking to do some customs and stuff. And then we got the belt, which is super intricate and ornate, just like the rest of the jewelry and stuff. This is a special belt with a special torso that you're not going to be able to just use this torso on just any belt. You'll have to use this belt for now until they maybe like introduce this body with another character down the line. But yeah, pretty cool looking belt. And then we got these really interesting approach to cloth goods. Like, these aren't pants. It's like a wrap essentially. And just kind of the way it's assembled is very different than anything we've seen. But CJ just really, and the team over there, CJ and Keithlin, just kicking butt always on these awesome cloth goods. It's very satiny. It's got like a satiny feel. And then the 2 cloth, types here are like a little bit different textured going on. You got some gold stitching there. Really nice cloth goods. No wiring or anything like that. You wouldn't really need it in this situation, but I could definitely see some people using these pants on some other, like other figures and stuff. The scarf, which is another piece of cloth goods, that is wired. So that does have a nice wire in it. And it's got the green scarf with that kind of shimmery gold, something that will probably go really well with Baethyr's Fury when that comes out. If you're into swapping out cloth goods with other figures. So, and that scarf runs up and down. It's one long straight piece, but it's got that wired so you can pose it all up. As far as the construction of the arms and legs, these are essentially brute scale. I think the upper arms and the upper legs are the straight up just like the same upper arms and upper legs. I could be wrong. Like sometimes they do things and they just like retool them and they just have slight differences, but they're very similar here. So if we were to look at Kalazir here, who he's kind of taken apart right now, but if you look at the upper arms, they look to be the same sculpt in the same size, but the lower arms are clearly different because the Kalazir arms are, 2-piece forearms, and then this is a 1 solid piece forearm on Ganesha. And then, of course, the hands are definitely different like fingernails and all that stuff. And then I think the upper legs are pretty much the same, in the same length and all that stuff. It's hard to tell. I'd have to really disassemble everything to totally compare it. But the lower legs are different. Like the lower legs are shorter on Ganesha. So I think those are new lower legs there. Clearly the feet are different. The feet have these sculpted pieces on here. So, if you're going to reuse these feet, they're going to come along with that sculpted part on there. But yeah, it's technically like a brute scale figure and kind of feels similar size-wise and chunkiness as a brute scale, but just the proportions are a little bit different. And here's Ganesha all zoomed out to give you a look at the overall silhouette of the figure, which stands probably about 8 inches to the top of the head and then 9.5 or so to the top of the headdress there. For comparisons, let's start it off with some other Figura Obscuras, and the gods of ancient Egypt, I think, do a good job of giving you a sense of how Ganesha looks next to a 2.0 figure on the left with Bastet, and a 1.0 figure on the right with Anubis. And then two more Figura Obscuras. On the left, we have the Mask of the Red Death. On the right, we have Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, both of which are technically on 1.0 bodies, though they are a little different proportionally than your standard 1.0. Next, a couple of the more recent Four Horsemen figures. On the left is the Graveyard Skeleton that uses the same body as Maxilius and the Skeleton Legion Builder 2. That is from the 4-pack. And then on the right is the Legendary Barbarian, which is currently a touring figure that they drop at conventions that will get an online release at the end of this year. Next up, a couple Ogre scale figures. On the left is a Rakagor. On the right is Decebalus with some part swaps. This gives you a sense of how tall to the top of that headdress it is. I mean, it's pretty much taller than Decebalus and almost as tall as a Rakagor. Now, the figure's body itself is much smaller, but this does take up a pretty good chunk of space. Here we have a couple Cosmic Legions. On the left is the AA-24 figure from Legions Con 24, and then on the right is Ias Sapedian, who you can see is like a tall, lanky guy, and the Ganesha figure actually is taller than him too. Bringing some other lines into it, on the left is Animal Warriors of the Kingdom Tiberius from Spiro Toys. On the right is Odious from Unparalleled Universe. Here's Mezco 112 Collective King Conan on the left with a few extra parts, Sea Jessamine pants, and the that tunic from the Barbarian Builder pack. And then on the right is the Darkwolf figure from Frazetta Girls Fire and Ice. Here we have a couple 7-inch figures. On the left is the Masterverse He-Man kit bash I made with a custom head sculpt from Monster Machine. That was painted by Eric Miller. And then on the right is the NECA Warduke from their Ultimate Dungeons & Dragons line. Axie Toys T-Rex from the Dinosaur Battlefield line on the left. And Blade Master Wang from Maestro Union on the right. A couple standard Hasbro figures will give you a sense of how big this dude is. On the left is the Marvel Legends Green Goblin. On the right is a Cobra Trooper from the G.I. Joe Classified line. Here we have a couple Bandai Movie Realization figures. On the left, we have Darth Maul, and on the right, a Stormtrooper. And last but not least, the Armies of Ashmore dinos from the Defenders of Eden action figure line. These just dropped. Rydur on the left, Vasipo on the right with a head swap. These are fantastic figures, sculpted, prototype by Four Horsemen, produced by the same production manager, Chris, who does the Four Horsemen production. Just all around awesome stuff. Okay, moving into accessories, here's a look at all the jewelry that it comes with. It's loaded with stuff. It's got these ringlets, it's got bracelets, it's got necklaces. This piece I didn't have on him in the turnaround shots. This is basically a bandolier that can kind of go all the way around his body. Of course, you got that necklace over here and all sorts of good stuff. So if you like kitting out your figures and, mixing and matching and kind of sort of decorating your figures, essentially, this thing has a ton of pieces with it. Here's a nice close-up of the headdress, which from the back almost looks like the top of a temple or something like that. Tons of sculpted details, lots of detailed paint. You've got little silvers in here, got some blues, almost like precious stones or something like that, and red stones in the front. You got a purple one right there in the middle. Very beautiful piece. He comes with a stool here with sort of a cushioned top that does have some variation in the shape. It's not just a perfectly round, perfectly shaped thing. It kind of looks like it's been sat in. It's got some texture on there. I think that might be a separate piece glued on to the gold base here. That's painted in a gold with a black wash and some silver details and a lot of that same really just intricate sculpt work that we see throughout this figure. Also with some wonderful sculpt work and nicely detailed and painted along the same lines as the bench, and the headdress is this halo that uses the back plug style situation to plug it in, and then you can have it behind his head as if it's a halo. I already mentioned the cloth goods scarf here in the golds and greens, and just kind of show it again so you can see the shape of it. I do consider the separate arms accessories, and I was wrong. I thought these were maybe shorter arms, but I believe they are exactly the same. So all 4 arms, upper arms and forearms, should be all the same, I believe. And this would be a good opportunity to just sort of mention again the flesh here, that elephant flesh. It definitely has that aged kind of flesh look to it. I really like the way that's painted. For hands, he does come with a pair of open hands, sort of a gesture. I guess this would be like a blessing, in this position here. And so that's the first set of hands. He comes with a pair of gripping hands with horizontal hinges, a pair of gripping hands with vertical hinges, and one extra hand with a peg on it, and that is for the sweets. Now, the sweets are basically like, I think it's like a reward for devotion kind of thing. And so these are sweets that he loves to eat. I think they did use, in one of the stories, I think they used the sweets to fill his massive appetite and avoid him eating all the food at like a certain wedding or something like that. But yeah, so there's the sweets and those peg on that hand. So similar to the headless horseman, where you had that head that could peg onto the hand and so that it just won't fall off. He's also got an alternate trunk here, and this alternate one does have a posable wire in it. It's not going to get the same kind of pose as this one, like the static pose of this one. But if you want to have, if you want to have it kind of like going forward and sort of just, if you turn this one, the tattoo or whatever it is gets off, sync, gets out of sync there. But if you use this one, you can have the trunk going forward or to the side or to the other side and still kind of have that lined up. So a good little option there, or just even if you just want the trunk to be perfectly straight. In addition to the sweets, he does come with some other foods here. He's got a bundle of bananas right here. He's got a plate of grapes, and he's got a couple apples. So you can kind of recreate that, that display where he's surrounded by all these foods. He does come with this beautifully sculpted and beautifully painted axe that is a symbol of enlightenment. It is a connection to like cutting ties to like attachments and a deeper connection to the spiritual world. But that axe is beautiful. Connecting to Ganesha's role as a god of beginnings, a god of wisdom, is this noose or lasso that I believe that's what this is. And when I was kind of like reading some of the lore, that this is connected to the idea of being able to bind and remove obstacles that are in people's way. In one of the stories, Ganesha's parents challenge him and his brother to race around the world, and they both have these animal vehicles. Ganesha has a mouse or a rat, depending on the story, and so the horsemen have included a rat here that is pretty large. I don't have it handy, but this is definitely a lot bigger than, like, say, the 112 collective rats that came with Nosferatu. It's a pretty big rat for 112 scale. So, pretty good for displays and photographs and dioramas and stuff. For articulation, I kind of like took all the stuff off just so that you can see everything a little bit better. The back arms, they function just as you would expect, exactly like the front arms there. So up in the head, you do have this double ball joint, which gives like a ton of motion. So he can come down this far, and then he can go back and look up, and he can look down with his head back, or he can look down even further this way. So there's just a lot of good range in that neck, and a lot of good motion. That is great because you tend to fill this space up with all of his necklaces and the cloth goods, and like everything tends to fill the space up. So it's nice that there's a lot of room to move up in that neck. One thing that surprised me a little bit is that the ears are actually articulated. So those actually have a hinge, and then they can twist all the way around. So some good action there with those ears as well. And while the head has some great range of motion, the arms are a bit limited. Like usually you can get the arms up a little further than this, but it's about all they're going to do on that torso. Of course, the arms in the back have a lot more range, but you can swing the arm around, and then you have a single jointed elbow that comes a little bit past 90, or just maybe right about 90 degrees there. You do have a twist at that elbow there, and then you have a twist at the wrist, hinge at the wrists depending on the hand. Some have vertical, some horizontal. As we get into the waist, this is where I feel like it's very limited, and it can be super finicky the way the waist is constructed. And I think part of it is just the nature of it, but they may have been able to like raise the peg up. So here's the issue. It is a ball jointed waist, but the thing is, like right now you can see like those legs are solidly on there, but once you start posing it up and you kick the legs forward, it can start to loosen that waist, and then the waist can pop off very easily. So it can be super tricky when you're trying to get like a really nice pose with this guy. Like it's gonna be finicky. Like I almost feel like it's the type of figure where you want to pose up the top half, pose up the bottom half, and then pop it on. And it can be frustrating to pop it on solidly because as you're trying to pop it on, the bottom half moves around and then your pose you got can kind of get out of whack. So that waist is going to be tricky. I think it's going to frustrate some people, but ultimately, it can stay on there. It's just that it's, there's not a lot of range and it can pop off fairly easily. And so as far as that articulation goes in that waist, you can really, it's about twisting below the waist. There's not much crunch forward and back. If you were to take the belt off, you could kind of get a sense of how it moves and pop that back on right there. You could get a little crunch forward and back and a little side to side. But with that belt on, there's really not much there in terms of that ball joint being functional. And again, that waist keeps things a little limited, but he can kick forward a bit. He can kick back a bit. He can go out into the splits. There is a twist at the top of the thigh. So you have that motion there. You do have a single jointed knee. There's a twist below the knee, hinge at the ankle, and rocker and twist at that ankle. So it's pretty much standard 1.0, but like the waist is just very limited. Before we get into some pop and swaps, I do want to disassemble the figure so that you can just kind of see what it looks like, especially down in the pants and stuff. So if we get that head off here and then bring the arms up, like I said, torso pops off of that ball jointed waist very easily. And then you have this belt piece that slides right up. And here's where it gets a little complicated and where I want to kind of document how this comes on and off, just so that I, even just for myself, have a record of like how to put it back on. So CJessam with their crafty, very inventive ways of doing cloth goods, they have this wrap essentially. It's not even exactly pants. It's like a wrap. So if you take this elastic piece off of the peg and then this second elastic piece off of the peg, you can do this. And then it is tied on in the middle like this. I don't even want to untie that because I don't know if I'm going to be able to like tie it back together, but you do have a little extra of that string here. So, if you do end up untying this, you can get it back together. Just, take a look at this and maybe try to recreate that knot. And then, so all that is the pants can come down below here. Let's see. And then, so what we have is he's got a piece here to give him a rear end that actually pegs in different than the usual boom boom hole. Like this one's not a ball peg. This is just a straight cylindrical peg there. And then once those are down, you can pull the pants down over the legs just like that. And so the pants are, it's almost like sort of like a two-sided ribbon or something like that. It's interesting. The way it's all sewn together, it's not exactly like a pants. It's like a multi-layered piece. So I don't really want to disassemble this piece because I feel like I won't be able to get back together, but there's your pants essentially for him. And so then here's a look at the body without any cloth goods at all on there. And it looks pretty decent. I think you would definitely want some kind of skirt, like especially when you look in the back, it's all gappy and you can see that butt over there. But I do think you could, with a simple skirt situation, get a pretty cool look out of this. Now, you're not going to really be able to use any other belt except for this one. So like if you take this belt off and then pop it back together, like that's the body. It'll get tricky trying to figure out what to do with this line right here. So maybe someday I would imagine for sure they're going to use this body again. At which point they'll probably have a different belt. Okay, I have 3 pop and swaps for you. The first one is just a straight up head swap. I kind of, minimized everything on the figure and then just put the knight's head on there. And I have him with the axe and so on. Obviously, once he spins around, you're going to see holes in his back that are pretty big. You could maybe fix that with a cape or something, but those holes are just going to be there. We're kind of used to having holes in the back of our Mythic Legions figures because of all the interchangeability and compatibility. But yeah, I think this looks pretty darn good. Next up, simple limb swap the arms and upper legs from Ganesha on an Armory Knight with the skirt piece for Poxus. And, the only thing about this is it can be a little tricky fitting the brute scale parts into the 1.0 scale parts, but I like the way it makes this kind of monstrous silhouette. And finally, like I said, I was going to try a skirt to go without the pants, and this is the Kalazir skirt. And then the head sculpt is from the Undead Builder Pack, which is a pretty darn close color match. It's not exact, but it is really close, and I think this character looks awesome. Final thoughts. Again, I always love the Figura Obscura drops. It's a collective experience. There's the surprise element of it. I'm so honored to, have my role in it. Of course, this figure is an absolute display piece. It is, like I said, finicky at that waist. Again, I don't know if that's just mine or all of them are going to be like that, but overall, it can be a little tricky to really pose up really well. But once you do get it posed up, it looks so good. And I do think there's going to be some really neat options for customizing with this brand new torso. So very, very cool figure. Thanks again, Four Horsemen. Thanks for watching. And until next time, may the force be with you.